Coming up on 9 p.m., Friday, December 25th, 2020. There's not a soul at the airport right now. The atmosphere, the traffic pattern are just dead calm, dead quiet. It seems like it wasn't even a week ago that I was standing out here on this tarmac in front of this hangar, talking to this camera with these lights and everything about 2019. And at the beginning of that year in review video about 2019, I said a lot's changed. And I'm gonna say the same thing about this one. 2020 held some unforeseen circumstances that none of us could have predicted. When we're faced with deep adversity or situations that just have a grim undertone to them, we tend to pay attention to those grim undertones. We've all gone through our fair share of adversity in 2020. There's no doubt about that. But while considering the lessons learned in those times of adversity, what about the good things that happened? My 2020 kind of started off with a bang. It was great. It was looking really, really great. Especially I just released that year in review video for 2019 and I was feeling really good about 2020. Miles and I hopped in the 172 here and we flew down to Lake Jackson, Texas, grabbed some seafood and then ripped down the coast. It was just a fun flight, getting back to basics, taking a cross country to go grab some lunch with a friend. Right after that, I spent a day with my friend Jessica in Houston, and we flew down to Galveston, got seafood at this awesome place on the beach. And then we flew back to Houston at night and did the I-10 corridor right in front of downtown, and it was gorgeous. In mid-January, I hopped in 80991 and poured the coals to it heading west. Departed early in the morning, and I went out to Phoenix, Arizona, hung out with some friends out there, some good aviation friends, messed around with some airplanes out in that area. Then I continued that trip out to Southern California. I landed in Torrance, California, just south of LAX. And Alicia, a CFI out there, hopped in the plane with me. And we flew out to Catalina Island, an absolute bucket list item that has been on my list for a long time. And I've had like 3 failed attempts getting out there because of weather or maintenance issues, etc. We flew into Catalina Island, and that easily became one of the most fond memories to start out 2020. Knocking a bucket list airport off my list and having the privilege to capture that experience for all of you. I flew directly over LAX and landed at Van Nuys Airport, landing 80991 on 16 right at Van Nuys Airport. But 16 right and Van Nuys are so significant to me because of the film 16 Right. I'm sure many of you know it, directed by Brian Terwilliger. That film, at an early age, sparked my desire to want to combine my passions of filmmaking and flying and deliver the content that you are watching right now. Right after I got back from that trip, my friend Cameron called me up and said, hey, we're going to Madagascar on a wildlife hiking expedition. There's 1 spot left. This is what it'll cost you, all in. Do you want to go? And I hesitated. Ultimately, I took him up on it, and that trip taught me so much about so many things. First of all, going to a third world country like that and seeing how other people live and seeing how happy they are. It's a bit eye-opening to our own personal happiness, right? I feel like 2020 really exposed us to the idea of looking into ourselves for our own happiness by quite literally isolating us from the rest of our own worlds and our social lives and all that kind of stuff. So Madagascar really opened my eyes up to that concept. And it also reinforced so many realizations that were maybe already there or were perhaps dormant in me about my love for filmmaking. I think it was a reignition of my passion for filmmaking that I kind of needed. It's very easy to get bogged down in the details about what we're doing, but back up. Why do I do it? And I think that was something that Madagascar just opened my eyes up to once again. Looking through the viewfinder of a camera and having just this burning desire in me to tell a story. Shortly after coming home from Madagascar, we produced the AQPGrassroots series here on Aviation 101, and that was in conjunction with some content that Flight Chops produced previously. And I think that set of content that we produced is among some of the most important that we've ever produced. We dove deep into the statistics as to why pilots keep dying. An otherwise seemingly non-fatal situation turns into a fatal one. Why does that keep happening? Here at Aviation 101, we don't produce content and put out content to be popular or to get clicks, to get views. I want to put purpose behind content, be it to inspire, give insight about a certain type of flying through the beauty of taking a long cross country. But that AQP Grassroots series really drove the point home that I started all of this to produce content with purpose, and that's exactly what we're gonna keep doing. In the month of May, I met some friends up in Northeast Texas, and I flew as the CFI with their daughter Katie, who just got her private pilot certificate on her first long cross country. And that was an experience that was awesome for me because it obviously gives me more experience as a flight instructor with different personality types, but it also just made me happy because I was using my certificates and using the cameras to capture the experience to share it with everybody else as a way to give back. There are so many people in my life who have helped me through thick and thin to get to where I am now. And I'm a firm believer in paying it forward, and I got to do it on that trip, and it was amazing. That was an experience that I wish that I would have had back when I started flying. Probably would have helped me become a safer pilot quicker. Right after that trip in the Cherokee 180 out to Phoenix, I came back, maybe had a week at home, and then I prepped 80991 to take yet another outing to Florida. This time because I wanted to be there to witness space travel history. The Falcon 9 launch by NASA and SpaceX was absolutely spectacular to see. And it was just a very moving moment to think about how many lessons were learned in the process of making that project become successful. Just pretty inspiring, especially sitting there on the shore in Titusville, Florida, hearing the rumble of those engines as that thing hurls a two-man crew into space. After that, I flew the 172 from Florida up into the Carolinas, and I got a first-class opportunity to show y'all the complications that can come along with cross-country travel. But I knew that I had all of this footage that's going to allow me to share these experiences with y'all and A, inspire you to take more cross countries and really use your pilot certificate, and B, show you the potential things that can happen on a cross country so perhaps you'll be more prepared for them than I was. Departing Florida and heading home, I flew around some weather that I am frankly not proud of flying around. There was one particular flight that was completely caught on camera, and while I did use aeronautical decision-making in the plane to avoid some of the really heavy stuff and prevent myself from getting into a bad situation, if we zoom out and look at the big picture in the grand scheme of things, I already put myself in a bad situation. That was a dicey situation I put myself in. But what's the silver lining? I learned a lesson, and I get to look back on that and say, I don't think I'm doing that again. After I got back from that Florida trip in early June, I pretty much laid low for the rest of the summer. I was sitting on plenty of archival footage that I needed to carefully edit so I could effectively tell those stories to y'all. In early August, I hopped in the 172 and flew up to Lake Ouachita in Arkansas and got to hang out with two friends that I absolutely adore that have a YouTube channel called Flying Sparks Garage. They do all sorts of automotive stuff, and they said, come up to the lake, hang out with us. And I did for 3 days. I threw a couple cases of beer in the back of the plane, packed all my stuff, and I got to capture that experience for y'all too. And once again, show the beauty of general aviation. And then in late September, I airlined out to Florida with all of my gear, crammed into the Mooney with Arnaldo, and we flew up to New England, ripped across the Midwest, across Chicago and Oshkosh, and onward into the mountains to see the other side of the United States at the Pacific. Coast to coast in a turbo Mooney with a close friend of mine, having so many adventures on the way that I can't even give away right now because the time of release of this year in review video, that series is still in progress. That was, I think, the biggest cross country of the year that I had taken, and got some of the most amazing footage and saw some of the most amazing places and got to meet up with some of the most amazing people. My buddy Troy, a volunteer pilot with Angel Flight South Central, invited me to tag along while he delivered Randall, a cancer survivor who's going through cancer for his 4th time, to MD Anderson so he can get the special treatment that he needs through the graces of Angel Flight. And you want to talk about silver lining? Randall is one tough hombre, as his wife refers to him as. This guy has faced more adversity than any of us could ever dream of facing in a lifetime, and he has the best attitude about life. What is my family gonna think in the face of adversity if they saw that I couldn't make it through this? And he woke up the next morning and carried on. On the way back from that Angel flight, Troy and I had to shoot an LPV approach down to absolute minimums. And that taught myself and Troy a lot about working in the crew environment, crew resource management, habits, procedures, and once again, it was all caught on camera to be able to share with you guys. I was supposed to go to Florida in early December, once again in the 172. We had a part go bad on the engine, and it ended up being a whole ordeal to get it. We had to get the sump removed from the bottom of the engine, which the engine like just went through a major overhaul, so it was really painful to see basically half the engine get taken apart. And it took about a month to get that issue resolved. And hear me out, this is where silver lining really comes in. We got everything put back together and started flying the airplane again. We put a good 5-6 hours on it or something like that. Everything's going great. We take off out of here at San Marcos at night. We're climbing out of runway 13, and at about 300 feet, the engine started to lose RPM. And the first thing I thought was, why is my dad reducing power? And I looked at his hand, and his hand hadn't moved. He's still holding full throttle, and the engine started running rough. The absolute first thing that went through my head was get the nose down. I spent so much time drilling in the AQPGrassroots series about engine failures on takeoff. Do not lose your airspeed, keep the airplane flying no matter what. And in that moment, right here off runway 13, I immediately told Tower we need an immediate landing. I didn't declare an emergency because there was no time. Tower got the gist, clear to land runway 26, and we did a U-turn with partial power, what partial power we had, and we brought this airplane in for what was basically an emergency landing, and we were not going to waste any time. Ultimately, we concluded that it was contamination in the induction system, but I'm really grateful that my dad and I had that experience, and it opened my eyes to the importance of being proficient with your emergency procedures and having that kind of stuff fresh on your mind. Engine failure on takeoff was fresh on my mind because I produced that big series about it earlier this year. And that decision was completely due to both of our recent training with loss of thrust on takeoff. The law of attraction, thoughts become things. What you think, you will bring upon yourself. And that's something really important for us to remember in the face of adversity, which has been all of us this year. We all faced perhaps some of the most intense adversity we've experienced in our lives, I think certainly in my generation. Let's focus on the silver lining. Let's focus on the lessons that we learned as a race, as a human race, the lessons we learned as a country, the lessons we learned as aviators. Every grim situation has a silver lining if you're willing to scratch through the rust. And that can be hard as hell to do sometimes. If you're gonna know where you're going, don't forget to look over your shoulder and recognize where you've been. Focus on the lessons learned. That's the silver lining that we all forget to look at. We're all improving as people, and we're all improving as pilots. I know I, for one, am improving myself every day, and I need it. So when you look back on 2020, yeah, we're gonna remember the hard times. We're gonna remember the grim, dark times that this year had to offer. But in the same breath, I'm gonna remember the good times. I'm gonna remember the lessons learned. I'm gonna remember the ways that I improved myself this year facing these hard times. I try to wake up every day and find that silver lining and grab a hold of it, take a good look at it, because what we think about, what we focus on becomes prominent features in our life. We're gonna continue learning from our mistakes, and we're gonna continue hunting for that silver lining that exists in every single situation. I'm so grateful for every one of you here that watch the content that we put out here on Aviation 101. It's changed so much over the years, and I still have so much learning to do. Every single day I find out more and more about just how much I don't know. And it's every single one of you that keep me inspired to continue pursuing that attitude and refining that attitude. So thank you so much for yet another year of content, and I'm looking forward to everything that we're gonna do in 2021. We don't know what's in store for the next year, but regardless of what happens, I think it's going to happen for a reason, and it's up to us to scratch beneath the rust and look for the silver lining. I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a happy holidays into the new year, and we'll see you in 2021.